Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Proverbs study. We are in the final chapter of the book of Proverbs today, which is exciting. We're finishing it up, and this is a great chapter. Probably the most well-known and often referred to chapter in the entire book. The PDF that you're seeing on the screen is available on our website, which is exciting because that means that all 31 chapters are now available, and I'm going to be working on the physical book to go along with the study that you'll be able to purchase on Amazon. I'll probably be doing that in the upcoming week. But I'll tell you more about future plans later at the end of this study. Let's get into this chapter. For our breakdown of the book of Proverbs, we obviously have now filled up all 31 of our dots. We are in chapter 31. This is going to be the Proverbs of Lemuel. I've got some interesting words for you in our definition section. The first one I'd never heard of before in my life. Both of them appear in verse 19, and they relate to the practice of spinning, like spinning material. The first one is distaff. I think that's how it's pronounced. This is a stick onto which unspun wool is wound in preparation for spinning. Putting the wool on a distaff keeps it from getting tangled during the spinning process. And then we have the word spindle, which maybe you've heard this one before. This is a slender, rounded rod with taper ends that's used in hand spinning to twist and wind thread from a mass of wool or flax held on a distaff. That's directly from the Oxford Dictionary because I couldn't give you my own definition of this because I have no idea of really how this works. But there you go. Those are your words for the day. And I do imagine that there's probably going to be a lot of people here maybe studying for the first time because this is such a well-known chapter. Let's review our interpretive principle for the book of Proverbs. This is going to help you understand the book and what we're supposed to take away from it. It's important to keep in mind that the Proverbs discuss principles, not necessarily promises. The wise statements of Proverbs are general truths for most situations, but not absolutes in all situations. Okay, so now let's go over to page number 2 and break the chapter down. The part that everyone's familiar with is going to be the second half of this chapter, verses 10 through 31. But first, we've got some introduction information to cover in verse 1, and then we'll talk about a mother's wisdom for her son in verses 2 through 9. So verse 1 really is just introduction. Proverbs 31 contains the words of King Lemuel, and he's interesting. We don't really know anything about him. This is the only mention of him in the Bible. At least a portion of these words were taught to him by his mother. So this is his wisdom, but also his mother's wisdom. In section number 2, let's read some of his mother's wisdom in verses 2 through 9. A mother's wisdom for her kingly son is the title here. Lemuel's mother advised him not to give himself over to women or to alcohol because they have the power to destroy kings. Getting drunk shouldn't be the pastime of kings because the upholding of the laws and the execution of justice in the nation falls on the king. And he can't be drunk or otherwise he's going to pervert justice. Drunkenness is for those who want to forget about all their miseries and their responsibilities. That's not what King Lemuel needed to be doing. She then counseled her son to stand up for the rights of those who had no voice, the needy, the destitute, and the poor. And now we move to our final section in the whole book of Proverbs, verses 10 through 31, the virtuous woman. This final section of Proverbs is well known and often read, and in it, Lemuel describes the qualities of a wise and a virtuous wife. In verse 10, it reads, "An excellent wife, who can find? She is far more precious than jewels." This virtuous wife, she is trustworthy, and her husband's mind rests in her integrity. He doesn't have to worry about her all of the time, or worry about her lying to him or being dishonest. She's a blessing to him, a source of joy, and a refreshment to his heart. Now you can compare this to some of the verses that we've read previously about troublesome wives, troublesome women, like in Proverbs 12:4, 19:14, and 21:19. She's hardworking. The text says she rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household in verse 15. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness in verse 27. She is diligent in everything, never lazy. Lemuel presents her as discerning and wise in her dealings, planning for the future and planting fruits for a future harvest in verse 16. In her work, she is a picture of feminine strength. You know, there is a feminine strength. There's a masculine strength, but also a feminine strength, and she here portrays that in everything that she does. She is discriminating in what she makes and buys so that what she produces for her household and what she takes to the market to sell will be profitable. In verse 20, she is generous to the needy She's also prepared to bring her household through all kinds of future challenges. Snow and cold weather are mentioned in this chapter, but they're not a concern because she's already prepared the necessary clothing to keep her family warm. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come, the text says. She looks at the future, and she doesn't look at it with anxiety or concern or, what might happen if things go wrong, things don't turn out the way that I had planned. No, she's ready for the future. She laughs at the future. All of her work is of quality and reputation. She doesn't do the bare minimum. She's a maker of fine things, which says something about her character and her work ethic. Limwell says that her family is clothed in scarlet, and her clothing is fine linen. In verse 23, Limwell writes, "Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land." The man who has a virtuous wife is able to make contributions outside of his home, maybe civil or otherwise, because the affairs of his home are so thoroughly managed by his excellent wife. His wife is a large part of his reputation, and being held in high esteem by the whole town, she's a blessing to him and his work in every way. The virtuous wife speaks and pours forth wisdom. She uses her tongue to teach kindness. Now compare that to some of the other statements that we've seen in Proverbs about people who spread gossip or division, right? That's not what comes out of the virtuous wife's mouth. She talks about wisdom and teaches people to be kind. Her town respects her, her husband blesses her, and her children praise her. And the book of Proverbs concludes with these last two verses. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. So you'll notice that I don't have an application section today, and the reason for that is because I wanted to spend as much time laying out the text as I possibly could, and so we've done that and taken up the majority of the space. I think there's an obvious application, really, just in this final section for women, that this is the kind of woman that you want to become. This is the kind of wife that you want to become. If you're a married woman, you want to strive for this. If you're not a married woman, you still want to be striving for this so that you can be this in the future. I think there's probably even application here for women who may never be married. These character qualities certainly are some that God would want women to have, whether married or not. I think there's also application for men in here. Obviously, if you're looking for a wife, you want a wife who is going to help you in life, draw you closer to God, be a blessing to you. And these are some of the qualities that you want to be looking for. I think the last couple verses here where it talks about charm being deceitful and beauty being vain, that's important advice for men because as men, we often, we're visual creatures. We're often looking for the most beautiful woman. Sometimes we're neglecting to look for these kind of character qualities in her, and we just get blinded by the beauty, right? This is a reminder not to do that. Also, for us as men, there's a reminder to praise your wife when you see these qualities in her, and also for children to praise their parents or to praise their mother when their mother has these qualities, and my mother certainly does. It's a reminder to be thankful for all the women who are around us who portray these great qualities and the qualities of Lady Wisdom that we talked about in some previous chapters. So really, there's application here for everybody. And that is the way that the book of Proverbs concludes with this really beautiful chapter. And I wanted to thank everybody for joining me on this study and spending 31 days or however long it's been with me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do in the future and what the next week holds and then the next part of our study. We are going to continue on through the Bible. As I mentioned in a previous study, I'm actually going to go back to Ezra. And we're going to go straight through the books of the Bible as they're kind of laid out in the English canon of the Old Testament. So we've already done 2nd Chronicles. Now we're going to go back to Ezra and we're going to go straight through. Obviously, skipping Psalms and Proverbs because we've already done them now. So we'll go Ezra all the way to Malachi in that order. I've had a lot of people asking for that, and so I'm just going to do it. Originally, I had wanted to kind of do things chronologically, but and I've changed my mind on that. I am going to take probably the next week off of making videos so that I can compile the Proverbs study into the book and to begin working to make that available on Amazon. But in about a week's time, and I'll put a post on YouTube when I'm ready to start. I think I'll also send out an email. If you're not on our email list, you can sign up on our website. I'll send out an email when we are about to start the Ezra study. and you can join us for that when the time comes. So I'm really looking forward to that, getting back into some kind of historical narrative material and being able to talk about the journey of the people of Israel as they are looking forward to the coming of the Savior, the Messiah. And so I think, Lord willing, that's what we'll do. Take a week off, then we'll be back to begin the book of Ezra. So stay tuned for that. And once again, thank you for joining me in this really great study that we've had through the book of Proverbs.